Hello everyone, welcome to today's Hangout on Air, featuring how Read Online uses Docs, Drive, and Hangouts to run the UK's #1 job site. I'm Christina Mondini, Program Manager for the Enterprise Customer Community Team. I'm joined here today by Adam Swidler, Google Apps Solution Strategist. We also have two fantastic panelists for you today. We have Mark Ridley, Director of Technology for Read Online, and also Darren Jackson from Grove Group. Grove is one of our Google Apps Premier partners. Darren has also helped Read Online with their change management systems. As a reminder, please submit your questions with the Ask a Question button on the Q&A app, and we'll answer them at the end of the broadcast. And with that, take it away, Adam.
Thanks very much, Christina. So as you know, what started as essentially an email application for businesses has grown into a very rich suite of applications that allows you to really access your information from anywhere on any device, allowing very high velocity and low latency communication and collaboration amongst people on your team, as well as people outside of your team and or your domain. It's very effective at sharing your content with multiple people, as well as being able to access it from wherever you may be. One of the things that we've seen, though, is that when a company goes Google, they typically start by deploying Gmail and Calendar for all the users. And then often they leave the other components, such as Drive and Hangouts and Sites and Google+, to be adopted organically by their users. And then what tends to happen, as shown in this chart, is that you get a certain amount of organic adoption in the beginning, and then it usually levels off to some degree. And we really want to try to keep that adoption growing so that we can take advantage of the full value of the suite of applications. And so this chart represents that with that red shaded area. That's value that we want our customer organizations to be able to capture. We've been investing very, very heavily in two particular product areas, Google Drive and Google Hangouts, that really help, I think, with that adoption challenge that a lot of our customers are investigating. Of course, Drive allows you to store, share, access, and do more with your content from any device. And Hangouts is a fantastic vehicle, as we're evidencing today, to communicate in all sorts of ways, whether it's one-to-many, such as today's broadcast, one-to-one, or in smaller groups. And one of the most powerful things about the Hangout service is that it really allows you to take advantage of all the fantastic technology that is permeating your organization in the form of mobile devices, right? Everybody today has a video conference set up in their pocket. And so Google Hangouts is the service that allows you to plug all that stuff together. So whether you're working to accelerate the projects that you work on, whether it's bringing a new service or a new feature or a new capability, such as Mark will talk about in a minute or two, whether it's accessing your content from your smartphone or your tablet, whether it's reaching these different audiences, these tools can really facilitate and make those conversations deeper, more intimate, more effective in what they're seeking to do. And so we're super excited to have Mark with us today to share how he's using some of these tools in his organization.
Thanks so much, Adam. And with that, Mark, Director of Technology for Read Online, take it away.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for inviting me to come and talk about what we've been doing. I guess for our non-UK audience, I'll start with a little bit of an introduction to the company. We might not be quite so familiar across the pond as we are in the UK. So just by way of an introduction, Read Online, which is the company that I work for, is part of a larger recruitment group, but we very specifically are responsible for the website read.co.uk. That's the site you can see up in front of you. We've actually got a few more jobs than that today. We've got about 180 or 190,000 jobs today. We're really the UK's #1 job site on pretty much any metric that you can talk about. And I think for us, one of the most important things that we as a business do is that we help people get jobs. So we are a web company, but we've been a recruitment company for 60 years, and now we've diversified and become a website that is a layer on top of that. In terms of the figures, just to give you a little bit of background behind read.co.uk itself, we have around 4 million users come to the site every month. That's about a fifth of the entire UK workforce. The figure on the screen is probably one of our most impressive. We have nearly 1 million job applications per week, and I'll let you all know when we actually crack that million. It's something we're obviously chasing after. And that's obviously a really, really meaningful stat of people that we're hopefully putting in touch with the right employer and employers that we're putting in touch with the right candidate. That stat is probably at peak time closer to about 20 applications a second. So we're very, very busy. About the company itself, though, we're not obviously just a website. We are a large number of people in the UK. We're not a massive business. We're a medium-sized business. We grew out. When I joined, there were 4 of us in the company. That was a long time ago. And back in about 2007, we were still at 25 staff. We're now 250. And we were always part of a much larger business that had about 3,000 staff across the UK. Obviously, a very UK-centric business, although with sort of increasing presence outside the UK. When we were looking at growing the business, one of the things that we did was we still inherited all of the IT systems that came from the rest of the Reed group, and very specifically with our sales team, who weren't developers. We have a large number of developers. The larger group than that is our sales team, and the sales team were still inheriting the systems that had been developed for our recruitment consultants, and they weren't really appropriate for the users that we had here. It was a very different user base. So back in 2012, we went to the executive board and we suggested that it was time that we looked for our own systems. Being a web company, we obviously had slightly different requirements to recruitment consultancy, and so we wanted to do things probably in a way that was driven by our heritage of being in the web. And what was probably evident was the fact that when I walked into that board meeting, I wanted to take over all of the technology and IT systems. When I walked out, having been given it, it suddenly hit me exactly the scale of the challenge that had actually been given to us. So you should always be careful what you wish for. But in terms of the journey that we went on, really we came from a position that would be familiar to lots and lots of people. So on the next slide, you can probably see some logos that will be familiar to people out there in a more traditional IT setting. So big names and lots of really fantastic software that work very well for the Reed business, but it wasn't really working well for us as a web business. So we started off with this sort of legacy of corporate systems, but we wanted to move to something that was more appropriate to us as a high technology company, as a company that was made up nearly as much of developers as it is of salespeople. And we wanted obviously to make sure that we were giving a really good user experience to people that were much more familiar with social media, the kind of consumer feel that you get from modern web applications. We really wanted to deliver to our users. So that really led us to come up with a philosophy over the next 2 years to where we are today, of trying to make sure that wherever possible, all of the legacy IT systems were moved to systems that could be consumed initially from a browser. And the first way that we approached this is we saw a browser as the lowest common denominator for us to actually consume all of the things that the business needed. But actually that has increasingly evolved to become more mobile focused. So actually we do want everybody accessing through a browser where they can, but on top of that we also have a layer where we want people to be accessing through mobile devices. So really, just to kind of spend the most time talking about what the benefit of this has been, and this is probably a 30 or 40 minute presentation that's been compressed down, but where we wanted to get to was really reducing the friction in the business. That was really our main goal, to try and make it easy for all of our staff, regardless of which part of the business that they're in, to do their job day to day. And I don't think we really came in with an intention for apps and Hangouts and Drive to be absolutely the core of the business. We were foreseeing a hybrid model that used lots and lots of different technologies. But actually, what's happened over the last year, really, we actually rolled out Chrome boxes to all of our sales team in July of last year, Chromebooks and Chrome boxes. But with our product team, they use high-powered PCs. They're developing, they're writing code, and to them, what we wanted to do was really deliver this end-user browser experience. And one of the biggest things that we did that actually suddenly kick-started that from that plateau of adoption up to the next step was replacing all of the devices in shared areas. So if you imagine there are PCs next to big screens around the building in meeting areas. One of the things that we did was we went and took all the PCs out and put Chrome boxes in instead. And it was that really kick-started the adoption of Drive as the central storage of all documents across the business. And also just the ease of use of Hangouts, and actually, crossing that gap from do we really want to allow chat? Is it going to be misused within the business too? Actually, chat is a really vital part of the ecosystem that we have, and it's a really useful way, especially where you've got people who are in a kind of focus zone, who are really concentrating on a task, and you don't want to interrupt them, but you don't want to go to email. Hangouts is really, really useful for the entire product team when it comes to that. And one of the things that I did in preparation for today's event was to actually go out to the team and ask them what it was that they really felt the biggest benefits were, because it's a little bit difficult, because we had so many changes going on. It's a little bit difficult for us to actually say, well, this is the KPI, this is the return on investment that means that Google Apps has been a great investment for us. It doesn't really work with that, and it also doesn't work because there have been so many changes in our business and so much evolution in our business over the same period. But what our users were actually saying, the feedback that came back was pretty consistent. Right at the top was Hangouts and chat. Not only video Hangouts, which we use with some of our remote workforce, but also the text chat. That's really, really empowering the business, and the ability to search all those chats is turning out to be really useful for everybody as well. In addition to that, collaboration is huge. Actually, even today, I've been working with the team on a piece of research and discovery where we've been working together with, I've been working with 4 or 5 other people. I know that other teams in the business have been doing exactly the same thing. And our go-to app is within apps. I actually kicked off a new Sheets document. And we just started, we've got multiple tabs. We're all throwing information in there. We can chat about the information that's going in. And it's really, really easy. It's very easy to find exactly what you want to work on. And it's really easy to get other people involved in it. Remote access, one of the comments that you no longer need a VPN to actually do the work that you do day to day was very important. And one of the other things, and quite surprising, is people love forms. They just want to chuck out surveys across the office, and it can be everything from who's stolen my coffee cup through to actual things to do with product development. And they really love that ability to actually collect data really, really easily. Some of the things that you can see on screen there, those are actually from our teams, from the service delivery team. It's daily stand-up Hangouts with screen sharing. With our product management team, it's collaborating on in this case, that one example was given. We were actually writing job descriptions and bouncing it between people as they worked on the same document. And from the product effectiveness team, things like looking at real-time sales inventory and again surveys. So really, that was the feedback coming back from the users, and this very this enormous sense of just being able to use all of those things on mobile devices wherever they were, not really having any friction, and just finding technology much easier to use. The one stat that I will share with you, it's not specifically related to apps, it is related to change across the business, but was just that we've actually, over the period that we've implemented all these changes, moved from the legacy systems to this, we've actually seen a 20% increase in revenue per head across the business, and at the same time a reduction of 35% per head in providing technology to end users. So it's not specifically Google related, but Google is very much at the heart of some of that evolution. So it's not an ROI just for doing this specifically, but you've got happy users, and across the business there's better revenue and lower costs. So it's a win for everybody, I think. And that's it.
Wow, thanks so much, Mark, for sharing all of that. Really great experiences, it sounds like, for Read Online using Google Apps. So that's great. And now we're ready to move on to our Q&A, our questions and answers section of today's broadcast. As a reminder, simply select the Q&A app and submit your questions live. Pretty great part of the Q&A app is that you can actually plus certain questions that you want to be asked. So even if you don't have a question, you can participate that way. Our first question is from Mark. What were your biggest challenges to adoption of Google Apps among business users?
It's exactly the same thing as it is with any kind of change, which is it's change. Even with, we saw that stat early in one of the slides that when we'd run satisfaction surveys, people would say, the technology, IT, that's the problem. And it was very frustrating for me because it wasn't really in my remit at the time. And then as soon as we came back, with kind of this plan, we wanted to get people's buy-in. And one of the things that we did was we went through the business and sort of nominated key users, people that were really positive and wanted to get involved in bringing this change into the business. And we actually gave them In fact, we gave them Chromeboxes and apps and Drive and everything at the same time. And we worked with them for a month. And we really ran sort of daily or weekly sessions with those users. What is it that's irritating you? Knowing that they had a higher tolerance for those issues because they wanted to drive that change themselves. And so what we did was we worked with them. We had a team who were very specifically sat down, available for those teams just to walk up to and say, how do I do this? And then we spent a month working really, really closely with them and then rolled it out to everybody else. So in a sense, it was almost self-propagating. It was very much a question of people going out and evangelizing it for us. We kind of got away from that traditional IT department feel. We don't really have IT staff. We've actually moved the role of IT support staff to be trainers because that's actually dealing with the issues before they even occur. So we've got great people with great people skills, and they're out and actually evangelizing apps for us. And actually, as soon as people realize, I can actually do these things with it, the adoption spiraled, and we didn't really have to do anything. It was very, very easy from that point of view.
If I may just quickly interject there as well, I tend to find that the most successful adoption through our client base are the ones that fully embrace a change management program. We tend to find the ones that want to do it by themselves can take anything up to 18 months to fully embrace it, whereas if they fully embrace a change management, well, from an ROI perspective, you start utilizing and getting the full benefit from using Google Apps almost immediately.
Yeah, and Christina, that's precisely what we showed in that chart at the beginning, right? Is that if you don't have a proactive approach to these things, that's where you start to see some of that plateauing. And as Darren was talking about, having a proactive plan and approach to change management is really key to getting that adoption.
Thanks, guys. Our next question is, how do you manage clients and customers you work with that don't allow access to Google products? Companies that block Drive or Hangouts, for example.
It's not really been an issue, and it was one of those things that we thought was going to be really difficult. It was one of those things that when we were first confronted with it, we're a company that works with contracts, even with CVs or resumes all the time, and they're typically in doc or docx format, PDFs potentially. And one of the things we were really concerned about was how that interaction with other companies was going to work. And actually, one of the, and I'm eternally grateful for this, one of the early reasons that we went with Google was one of our sales team coming to us, and we actually discovered she was using her own Gmail account. So we sat down with her, and I'm sure she thought she was going to get in trouble, and hopefully we're not that kind of business. But we sat down with her and said, why are you doing this? Why have you sort of hacked your way around this problem? She said, well, I can't send files bigger than 2 meg with Lotus Notes. And okay, well, this is a brilliant use case. Let's put you as the early adopter on Google Apps. And so that was where we actually moved her over to the trial that we were running with all of the technical staff. There are, I don't think there are really issues. Generally, sharing outside of the company is done with email or with e-signing. There's lots of ways to get documents outside of the company. And if we want to send something outside of the business, it will typically be exported from Drive to a docx or a PDF or whatever that end user can actually use. So we don't share outside of the domain. From within Drive, we don't say make this Drive document available to somebody in Google. We just send the document over, and that may be seen as a slightly second-class citizen approach, but actually it works, and there's no friction there. It's very, very easy for people to get their head around how they should be working with their customers. Within the technical team, that's not an issue. Translating things from one document type to another has been something we've been doing for years, so it was a very natural path.
Yeah, and certainly from a growth perspective, we've got in excess of 2,000 customers. Which works out to about 400,000 end users. I'm not aware of anybody who has any issues really. Well, certainly that makes its way back to me by any means.
Okay, great. Our next question: are you leveraging communities in Google+? If so, how, and are the users active within the communities?
I'd love to say we are using it, but we're not. Because of how quickly we were doing our procurement, actually G+ wasn't as advanced in the enterprise as it was now. So we actually chose a different social intranet platform that we use for those kinds of things. So things like ideation, idea sharing, and sort of blog posting, status updates, those kinds of things. So we typically use that within the business. It works well, and actually one of the great things about this sort of new paradigm in IT of being able to select lots of services that work together is the level of interoperability between all of those things is that much higher. So we do actually flip easily between one system and another. So we don't use G+. It didn't have the features it does now around enterprise, and it's great to see, now you can actually see the little enterprise logo come up when it's somebody inside your business. So it's much more evolved now than it was sort of 18 months ago when we were actually making that procurement decision. So we tried to keep people, just for the sake of their sanity, tried to keep them using the other platform for that community type aspect.
And Mark, I think your decision makes perfect sense given the timing and where Google Plus was at the time. But as you mentioned, we've been investing a lot in the Google Plus product with enterprise-specific features. So, of course, many of the things that we develop start out as consumer products, and we add the necessary controls to make them viable in an enterprise context. And some of the things that we've rolled out recently around restricted communities and adding some settings for privacy of the profile and things like that, I think have allowed more and more organizations to start doing stuff with Google Plus.
And I know we use it internally, and I love to use our kind of secret communities that we have. We have them for all different reasons, whether they're work-related or fun-related. And so I'm a part of a bunch of them inside Google. Our next question, how easy has it been for non-technical users in Read Online to get a grip with Hangouts?
For most of our non-technical users, they're not really using video Hangouts. So to sort of draw a line between the two, we use text chat Hangouts regularly across all different parts of the business. That's it's very, very easy to get hold of, and also just things like how well integrated search is from Gmail. I don't think we've ever found any particular issues in training that out. I think most people are pretty obvious with how an IM function works. With video, it's pretty much equivalent with any other video conferencing software that we have out there. We don't use it heavily across the business outside of the product team.
And as a business, I deal mainly at C level and board level, and which predominantly generally don't tend to be techie people. And part of the process that I go through with engaging them within the business, I always encourage them to have a hangout with me on air, be it with a private Gmail account or so on. So for me, it's a fabulous tool that I use to engage with people, to share documents and other bits and pieces, really just to get them buying into the whole Gmail and Google Apps approach.
And actually, I'd like to hear Darren's take on this next question. Are all your docs Google Docs, or are you using Drive to access and share other types of files? What has been your experience at some of the companies you've worked with?
Okay, so at Grove, we're 100. It's going to sound like I'm really pushing it, but genuinely, I'm on a Chromebook now. I don't have a laptop. I have a private laptop which hasn't seen the light of day for the last couple of years. I purely use Chrome devices, and everything is in Google Docs, 100%. Any documents, and clients regularly share NDA documents or commercials, whatever they need to share with me, and everything is viewed within Google Apps. And it works both ways, obviously, when I'm working with other clients as well. Past experiences, yeah, I don't have any issues, and it seems to work very, very well for me.
What about you, Mark?
Yeah, well, I was going to say yes. Every document is in Drive. That's not quite true. The 4 gig Photoshop files, they're not in Drive yet. But if you keep dropping the price of storage, maybe one day. But yeah, pretty much every document that's business related is now in Drive. There are some documents and obviously some systems that don't live in Drive, but it's primarily things which it could be backup files or things like those enormous Photoshop files for our creative and design teams. It's typically those things that are just not appropriate yet to put in Drive. But by and large, every business document is now somewhere in Drive.
And one of the questions that came up, Mark, was just around sort of the security and data protection that's in place. Maybe you could talk a little bit about how you addressed that as you were, talking to the board and getting them to buy into the decision to move on to Google.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, it's a really interesting question. I think when we were considering this move to the cloud or to software as a service, one of the things that we had to ask ourselves is we were moving away from being a business of 3,500 people to a business of 250 people. And that's a very different place to be in. And I think we approach this very much with an SME mindset. And with an SME mindset, sure, security absolutely has to be the first thing that you consider. And actually, the first two products that we bought, the first two services that we bought when we moved to, or started moving to this cloud philosophy and everything being browser-based, was actually identity management and bring your own device management. So they were the first two things that we bought. So security absolutely up front. But then thinking as a small business, and this is absolutely a different answer. I've spoken to people who are running 500,000 strong businesses, and they obviously, they have entire departments thinking about one aspect of security. That's not a resource that we have. So for us, actually, it makes much more sense. One of the things is that security has to be easy to use, or it's not secure. If you have very, very complex, very hard to use security, then it really impacts the end user, and they start doing things like writing post-it notes or passwords on post-it notes. So for us, security had to be easy to use, and it had to be seamless. But over and above that, for us as an organization, we have to bring in all of those. Sorry, lights keep turning off. We have to keep bringing in, that's how eco-friendly we are. So we have to bring in those specialist skills, because we can't afford to have an entire full-time security team. And so with this, we rely on the people that we outsource to provide those levels of security. So we go through due diligence, we go through all of the technical documentation about Chrome boxes and around apps, and we've seen all the other people that are using it with higher security requirements than we do. And for us as a small business that only has a limited budget, it's a question of is that appropriate? Is that good enough? And by and large, certainly in Google's case, it was. With every other supplier that we've selected, it has been. So we think that we're actually coming out with a higher level of security than would if we were trying to do it ourselves, because we just don't have all of those resources to bring to bear to secure things internally as much as we want. So we're actually more comfortable. We're never totally comfortable with security. We always want the next best thing. But for us, this was the most sensible choice to get the highest level of security.
And Mark, are you integrating with CRM or any other ERP type functionality?
We're not specifically integrating it. We use both SAP and Salesforce. Both of those are browser-based technologies, so our users can jump very easily. And actually, from our identity management portal, it pops up a portal screen that everybody gets access to, and they leap from one thing to another. There have been no issues with integrating between those two things, and actually, it kind of goes back to that hybrid model. Hopefully, what we've done is pick best in class for every single one of those solutions. The integration with those things specifically is probably more to our back-end data warehouses, databases. So it's more at a systems level than it is at a user level.
Okay. And with that, we're at our end for the Hanging On Air. Thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Mark and Darren. Thank you for taking the time. I realize in the UK it's getting pretty late, so we definitely appreciate you coming. And thank you to all the users who submitted questions live and for watching. Next month we have another Hang On Air featuring Hangouts beyond the conference call. We look forward to seeing you then. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.